Yeah, and when we take that anode cost reduction, we're looking at another 5% dollar per kilowatt hour reduction at the battery pack level. And there's more. Let's talk about cathodes. What is a battery cathode? Cathodes are like bookshelves, where the metal, you know, the nickel, the cobalt, the manganese, or aluminum is like the shelf, and the lithium is the book. And really, what sets apart these different metals is how many books of lithium they can fit on the shelves and how sturdy the shelves are. Cobalt is a...
Yeah, sorry, I was just going to say, like, it's tough to exactly figure out what the right analogy is to explain cathode and anode, but a bookshelf is probably a pretty good one, in the sense that you need a stable structure to contain the ions. So you want a structure that does not crumble or get gooey, or basically that holds its shape in both the cathode and the anode. As you're moving these ions back and forth, it needs to retain its structure. So if it doesn't retain its structure, then you lose cycle life and your battery capacity drops very quickly.
Absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree. And I think people are always talking about, like, oh, what's the cathode going to be? Is it NCA or whatever? You know, the thing to consider is just fundamentally what the nickel, the metals are capable of, and that's what we have on the chart here. Dollar per kilowatt hour cathode of just the metal, using just LME, you know, London Metal Exchange prices, versus the energy density of just the cathode. And you can see nickel is the cheapest and the highest energy density, and that's why increasing nickel is a goal of ours and really everybody's in the energy in the battery industry. But one of the reasons why cobalt is even used at all is because it is a very stable bookshelf. And the challenge with going to pure nickel is stabilizing that bookshelf with only nickel. And that's what we've been working on with our high nickel cathode development, which has 0 cobalt in it. Leveraging novel coatings and dopants, we can get a 15% reduction in cathode dollar per kilowatt hour.
Yeah. Big deal.
But it's not just about nickel. You want to?
Yeah, sure. So in order to scale, we really need to make sure that we're not constrained by total nickel availability. I actually spoke with the CEOs of the biggest mining companies in the world and said, please make more nickel. It's very important. And so I think they are going to make more nickel. But there's also, I think we need to have a kind of a 3-tiered approach to batteries. So starting with iron, that's kind of like a medium range, and then nickel manganese as sort of a medium plus, intermediate, and then a high nickel for long range applications like Cybertruck and the semi. Because something like a semi truck, it's extremely important to have high energy density in order to get long range. So just to give sort of iron a bit more time, like although if you look at the watt-hours per kilogram at the cathode level of iron, it looks like nickel's twice as good. But when you fully considered at the pack level, everything else taken into account, nickel is about maybe 50 or 60% better than iron. So iron is a little better than it would seem when you look at it at the pack level fully considered. It's not as good as nickel. Nickel is like 50 to 60% better, but it's actually pretty good. And so, good for stationary storage and for medium range applications where energy density is not paramount. And then, like I said, for intermediate, it's kind of a nickel manganese, and it's relatively straightforward to do a cathode that's 2/3 nickel, 1/3 manganese, which would then allow us to make 50% more cell volume with the same amount of nickel.
And with very little energy trade-off. I mean,
Yeah.
Just enough to have you still want to use 100% nickel for something like a semi-truck, but really not much of a sacrifice at all.
Yeah.
And, beyond the metals, because a lot of people spend time talking about the metals, actually the cathode process itself is a big target. 35% of the cathode dollar per kilowatt hour is just in transferring it into its final form. And so we see that as a big target, and we decided to take that on. Here's a view of the traditional cathode process. Effectively, if you start at the left and you have the metal from the mine, the first thing that happens is the metal from the mine is changed into an intermediate thing called a metal sulfate, because that's just happened to be what chemists wanted a long time ago. And then when you're making the cathode, you have to take this intermediate thing called metal sulfate, add chemicals, add a whole bunch of water, a whole bunch of stuff happens in the middle, and at the end, you get that little bit of cathode and a whole bunch of wastewater and byproducts.
Yeah, it's insanely complicated. If you look at the total, like if you're just like, it's a small world journey of I am a nickel atom. What happens to me? And it's crazy. Like you're going around the world 3 times. There's like the moral equivalent of like digging the ditch, filling the ditch, and digging the ditch again. It's total madness, basically. And these things just grew up as they're just kind of like legacy things that it's like how it was done before. And then they connected the dots, but really didn't think of the whole thing from like a first principle standpoint, saying how do we get from the nickel ore in the ground to the finished nickel product for a battery. And so we've looked at the entire value chain and said, how can we make this as simple as possible?
And that's what we're proposing here with our process. As you can see, a whole lot less is going on here. We get rid of the intermediate, metal, water, final product cathode, recirculate the water, no wastewater at all. And when you summarize all of that, it's a 66% reduction in CapEx investment, a 76% reduction in process cost, and 0 wastewater. Much more scalable solution.
Yeah.
And then when you think about the fact that now we're actually just directly consuming the raw metal nickel powder, it dramatically simplifies the metal refining part of the whole process. So we can eliminate billions in battery-grade nickel intermediate production. It's not needed at all.
Yeah.
And we can also use that same process we showed on the previous page to directly consume the metal powder coming out of recycled electric vehicle and grid storage batteries. So this process enables both simpler mining and simpler recycling. And now that we have this process, obviously we're going to go and start building our own cathode facility in North America and leveraging all of the North American resources that exist for nickel and lithium. And just doing that, just localizing our cathode supply chain and production, we can reduce miles traveled by all the materials that end up in the cathode by 80%, which is huge for cost.
Yeah, I mean, to be clear, cathode production would be part of the Tesla cell production plant. So it would just be, basically, raw materials coming from the mine, and from raw materials in the mine, out comes a battery.
And on that note, the way the lithium ends up in the cell is through the cathode, so then we should obviously on-site lithium conversion as well, which is what we will do using a new process that we're going to pioneer. That's a sulfate-free process again, skip the intermediate. 33% reduction in lithium cost, 100% electric facility co-located with the cathode plant.
Yeah. So it's important to note that there is a massive amount of lithium on Earth.
Yeah.
So lithium is not like oil. There's a massive amount of it pretty much everywhere. In fact, there's enough lithium in the United States to convert the entire United States fleet to electric. Like all the cars in the United States, there's like 300 million or something like that. Every vehicle in the United States can be converted to electric using only lithium that is available in the United States.
Discovered today.
What we already know exists.
People really haven't even been looking.
Yeah, people haven't been trying because it's just like widely available. So, but it is important to say, like, okay, what is the smartest way to take the ore and extract the lithium and do so in an environmentally friendly way? And we actually discovered again, looking at a sort of first principles physics standpoint, instead of just the way it's always been done, is we found that we can actually use table salt, sodium chloride, to basically extract the lithium from the ore. Nobody's done this before, to the best of my knowledge. Nobody's done this, and it's a sort of, all the elements are reusable. It's a very sustainable way of obtaining lithium, and we actually we actually got rights to a lithium clay deposit in Nevada.
Over 10,000 acres.
Over 10,000 acres. And then the nature of the mining is actually, I think, also very environmentally sensitive in that we sort of take a chunk of dirt out of the ground, or remove the lithium, and then put the chunk of dirt back where it was. So it will look pretty much the same as before, and it will not look like terrible, and yeah, it'll be nice. Nice.
Yeah.
So
simply mix clay with salt, put it in water, salt comes out with the lithium, done. I
Yeah,
mean,
it's pretty crazy.
Yeah. So we're really excited about this, and there really is enough lithium in Nevada alone to electrify the entire U.S. fleet.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, just what's in Nevada. That's basically there's so much damn lithium on Earth. It's crazy. It's one of the most common elements on the planet.
And eventually, as we said at the beginning, when we get to this steady state 20 terawatt hours per year of production, we will transfer the entire non-renewable fleet of both power plants, home heating and battery and industry heating and vehicles to electric. And at that point, we have an awesome resource in those batteries to recycle to make new batteries. So we don't need to do any more mining at that point. And you can see why.
Yeah.
The difference in the value of the material coming back from the vehicle versus the ground, you'd always go to the vehicle. And we recycle 100% of our vehicle batteries today. And actually, we are starting our pilot full-scale recycling production at Gigafactory Reno next quarter to continue to develop this process as our recycling returns grow.
Yeah, I mean, to date it's been done by third parties, but we think we can recycle the batteries more effectively, especially since we know our batteries, we're making the same battery as the thing we're recycling. So whereas like third-party recyclers have to consider batteries of all kinds.
Yeah, and just to think about what this actually means, the recycling resource is always 10 or greater years delayed because batteries last a really long time. But eventually, it is the way that all resources will be made available, and that's why we're investing in this recycling facility in Nevada.
Yeah. Long-term, new batteries will come from old batteries once the fleet reaches steady state.
Right. Okay, so we just talked about scaling cathode and recycling. All of the benefits that you just saw are added to this benefit of a 12% reduction in dollars per kilowatt hour at the battery pack level. Almost at our halve the cost goal, but there's one more section. Take it away, Elon.
Great. So there's an architecture that we've been wanting to do at Tesla for a long time, and we finally figured it out. And I think it's the way that all electric cars in the future will ultimately be made. It's the right way to do things. So it starts with having a single piece casting, or a single piece casting for the front body and the rear body. And in order to do this, we commissioned the largest casting machine that has ever been made, and it's currently working just over the road at our Fremont plant. We have the it's pretty sweet.